This past weekend, I went and played in my very first ever over the board chess tournament, the 2026 Kansas Open, which was held in Wichita, Kansas. And it's a 5 round event, 3 games on Saturday and then 2 games on Sunday. Time control is 100 minutes per player. I've already had 2 games leading up to this. This is the round 3 video, and I was able to get wins in both of my first 2 rounds. One of the games took like 3 hours. The other one was a little bit shorter, maybe only took a couple hours. But I had played a lot of chess during the day at this point, and so this round was at 7 p.m. in the evening. And I'm, I guess, technically a young person, but I feel like an old person because normally, with a toddler, we're in bed between 8 to 9 p.m. on most evenings. And so it was looking like this chess game starting at 7, could easily go to 9 or 10 p.m. So much later than I'm used to staying up. I'm certainly not playing chess at that time. But just to kind of set the stage, I went up with my family, and one of my buddies from chess club also had registered from the tournament. And so, my wife and I, we moved from Western Kansas to Emporia. So we'd only been in town for like a few weeks, but there is a chess club that meets at a local coffee shop once per week on Mondays. And so I had started going to that, and I met a guy named John who's really cool. He's a good chess player. And he was like, yeah, I'll sign up. I'll go to the tournament too. So at this stage, we are both 2-0. I won my first 2 games. He also won his first 2 games. And we both have moved up to the main board or the main table for our section. So John is playing on board 1 for our section right next to me. And then I'm on board 2 with my opponent here. So we're feeling pretty good. We're like, hey, we're both 2-0. We've both moved up to the main table. In the section, there were only 24 players, and only 4 of us went 2-0 through the first 2 games. So all 4 people that were 2-0 are sitting at this table, and my opponent is Dwayne J. Tate. So I walk up, and he is a very large black man. I would estimate he's maybe in his late 40s or maybe like early 50s. He was actually at the tournament with his son, his adult son, who was playing in the open section. So his son, also named Dwayne Tate, was rated like, I don't know, 16, 1700. He's pretty good. And even, the father is rated in the upper 1200s. So he's the strongest player I've played so far, right? I played a 1081 and a 942 in my first 2 rounds. So this is the highest rated player I've played yet, and I'm trying to go 3-0 is what I'm hoping for. So when I walk up to the board, he is not smiling. He has a very serious demeanor, which it didn't throw me off. I have taught at the community college level. I'm used to being in a room full of 6'7", 300-pound college athletes who, as the semester goes on, turns out they're real softies. But I could see if you were like a smaller middle schooler or high school player, it might be kind of intimidating sitting across from this guy. And later on, the next day in between rounds, we were talking and joking around. So he was a nice guy, but he meant business, right? He did not smile. He did not say hello. He had his game face on. The other thing too, he had a really cool chess set that his son had bought for him. And so that was one of the things that we were talking about the next day, was where he got that. But he had some ice. He had a chain that said the king. And so he was very serious, very different demeanor than the other 2 players that I had faced. So the round gets started. He has the white pieces. I am playing as black. And in my first game as black, the opponent played e4. And really, to be honest with you, I was only expecting to face e4 and d4 in this tournament. I really was not expecting any other openings from white. And he opens with knight f3. And so already I'm a little... I'm not thrown off. I've played against knight f3 online, but I really wasn't hoping to play against it in the tournament. So I was hoping for e4 or d4. If he had played either of those, I was actually planning to play knight f6. So if he played d4, I was going to go for a King's Indian. If he had played e4, I would have played Alekhine's defense. And so kind of either way in my mind, I was mentally preparing knight f6 as my response. And then he played knight f3, and I'm like, I don't know. So I still went ahead with this, and I figured he's probably going to, you know, play some kind of like King's Indian setup, and we'll just have a symmetrical setup, which is what usually happens online. And so we'd go from there. It's not a great position, but it should be relatively equal, and that is exactly what happens. He then plays g3, I play g6, and I think he was maybe like a little annoyed that I was copying him, and it's like, I'm not trying to copy you. I just, it's going to be a symmetrical King's Indian setup for us, and so this is the position that we end up in after his sixth move. We've both castled. We both have the symmetrical King's Indian setup. Really, the only difference is he's brought his knight forward to the middle of the board, and so we got to this position pretty quickly. And then from here is where I suppose we actually start, making chess moves that aren't just from our opening. And so I play e5. I wasn't exactly sure what to do here, but my thought process was that I'll try to take some space in the center. I'll be able to get my bishop out, be able to bring my knight out. So I didn't have a great plan, but this is sort of, I don't know, it felt good to, it felt like it would be good for me to put a pawn here, be able to bring a rook over or something like that. So I didn't have super deep plans with this, but I was like, this is probably an okay move. And then he plays e4, and so now we're really like in this pretty symmetrical position with the exception of the knight. But the pawns are looking towards the center here, and then we have the same setup with our kings. And so it's this is a very unusual position for me. Like, I'm not super familiar with this exact symmetrical setup, because usually even if we both have the same kingside setup online, usually we don't end up with the symmetrical pawn structure. So this is definitely not the opening I was hoping for, because I'm kind of in uncharted territory here. So I bring my bishop, and my thought process here is, I want to develop it and connect the rooks and all that, but also long term I want to either put my queen here or here, and I want to have the ability to get in and have some activity near his king. That's kind of my long-term goal with this move, which is sometimes something that white will do against me when I play the King's Indian. They'll put their dark squared bishop here, they'll bring their queen up, and they'll bring this down. And so I was kind of trying to use that against him since we had a similar setup. But he, I think, sees that that's coming, and he's going to move his king and protect that, so it's probably not going to happen. I bring my knight out, developing my knight. This would be a nice place to put it. He plays c3, so I just said I'd love to put my knight here, and he said, nope, you're not going to do that. So, and this is kind of a theme throughout the game where, like, a lot of the ideas that I had or things that I wanted to do, he was very good at reading my intentions and sort of like shutting that down. He was very good at proactively preventing me from being able to accomplish, what I was going to do. So obviously that was annoying for me, because it's like it felt like I didn't have any good moves for a lot of the game. So I do play queen c8, lining this up, and so if I take his pawn, he takes, and I take, I'll be up a pawn, and his king will be kind of exposed. I'll have my queen in a very active square. Would love if that happened, but of course, he sees right through that. He brings his king over, no problem. It's still very secure at this point. And I don't know if moving my queen here was the best move, or if I should have brought it to d7. I feel like maybe would have been better, because now my queen is kind of like stuck back here and I can't do anything with it. And so if I brought it here, maybe it could have come out on this diagonal. or I could have moved my rooks over. So I think this kind of like cramped my position. And looking back, I don't think that this was the optimal spot. I don't know if I was just thinking that I still wanted my knight to be able to come back, maybe, but it feels, looking back, this feels like a weird spot for the queen. So I play d5. He jumps his knight in, presumably targeting the bishop, but I don't know. For whatever reason, I don't think I move my bishop back, which maybe I should have. I push forward d4. He takes the bishop, and at this point, yeah, looking back, I don't know why I didn't try to preserve the bishop, because that seems like a good trade for him. I mean, I think he's better off trading the knight for the light squared bishop there. So then he plays c4, and at this point, I think what I saw was this pawn is now undefended, right? It doesn't have a pawn on either side anchoring it in, and if he's going to defend it, he's going to have to use like a bishop or a queen or a rook. And so I wanted to somehow get at the base of this pawn chain and sort of chop that down. I think was going to be my long-term goal, because I've been in games myself where when I have this structure in the middle, the opponent's able to target that weak pawn. And so that kind of became my goal. I was like, okay, how can I put pressure on that? So I bring back knight d7, and maybe I should have just jumped in right away, but I mean, he could have moved it and then it would be defended. And so I think my long-term thought process was, if I can get this here and this here, I'll have a lot of pressure on this. But I don't know. It doesn't. I'll give you a spoiler. It does not end up working out that way, because again, he's able to see that the knights are coming, and he's able to respond to that. So he plays knight b3. So now again, the queen is defending the pawn, and he's, if I do try to jump in with my knight here, those are just going to get traded off. Except that I actually don't have anything guarding this square. So I'm like, well, if I want to jump in with my knight, it needs to be defended. So to me, b6 was going to accomplish that, but the computer does not like the move. He plays h4, and then I play knight b4, again getting ready to jump in here, but he just says, what are you doing? And he kicks the knight out, and then I bring it to the corner, knight a6, which can't be a good place for it. If anything, I probably should have just gone right back, because it's really not accomplishing much out here. Maybe my thought process was, then I can get both of them on this square. I'm not exactly sure what the plan was with that move. He plays bishop h3, targeting my queen, and I bring the queen down. So it's still protecting the knight. It's out of danger. He plays f4. And I feel like this is kind of where things start to begin to go south for me. So up until this point, things are fairly even, and maybe for the next turn or two, they stay fairly equal. But then things sort of deteriorate gradually after that. So I play c5, and I think the engine just wanted me to take. But my thought process was, I have this pretty good pawn chain over here, and it's going to lock the center. And so if he wants to get in, it's going to have to happen some other way. Like, this side of the board is pretty locked down. None of this is moving. And so in my mind, I thought that was a good thing, but yeah, I probably should have just taken the pawn. He plays queen g4, and I just say, what's your queen doing there? And so then he has to move it. And then at this point, I play queen a4. I wasn't really sure what to do. I saw that this knight was undefended, and so maybe he's going to have to move that knight. But I feel like really there's not much follow-up with this, because once he moves the knight, my queen and knight are both just over here on the a file, and really I feel like the fight is happening over on the king side. And so I am not super happy with where I have placed my pieces, now that I'm looking back at it. He takes, and then I do not, I don't have anything to take back with, so I move my knight. I think the engine wanted me to just go ahead and take his knight, but that is not what I did. So I move my knight back, and then he takes, and I take, and he has won a pawn. He's up a pawn, at least temporarily. In my mind, I thought I was going to be able to win it back, but as you'll see, I don't think that happens quite the way that I thought it would. So then he plays bishop f4, now anchoring that pawn he had in there. And then I play f6, and this is definitely a mistake, because he takes, and then I take with the rook, and then he just pushes his pawn forward to kick my rook out. I move it back, and at this point, things start to look not so great for me. He plays queen d5 check. I have no choice but to trade the queens, because if I move my king, he wins the queen, so really my only choice here is to do that. And so now that we're at this position, he has two passed pawns. He's up a pawn, and, you know, I don't really have good ways to stop these. And so here things really start to go downhill. And again, I should have just prevented this by taking earlier and opening up the board. But for whatever reason, I was really trying to preserve this giant pawn chain, which, you know, wasn't that good. And then my knight really has nowhere to go either, so it's going to take a long time to reroute that. So the position is looking pretty grim for me at this point. Even though I'm only down a point of material, these two passed pawns are just going to be basically impossible to stop, particularly because they're together. You know, if it was just one, we could do something about it, but because they're paired together like this, there's not much I could do once we had reached this stage. So I bring knight c7, trying to get my knight back into the game, target this pawn, but guess what? He can just push it forward. And I mean, this is just, this is terrible for me. I have to move my knight again. He brings his other rook into the fight. I move my rook up so that my king can slide over. I didn't want my king to be cut off here. You know, I wanted to kind of shield it so that it could come in and participate, because it's going to be, I mean, I'm going to have to get my king involved if I want to stop these. He's rerouting his knight. I'm trying to bring my king over, but his knight gets there much faster. Now he's attacking my rook. I take with my knight. He takes with his bishop. And yeah, maybe I should have just taken the rook, but at this point, yeah, I tried to kick his bishop out. That didn't do anything. And from this position, I'll go through the moves pretty quickly, because as you can see, yeah, he's imminently going to promote to a queen and checkmate me. So there's not going to be much analysis here, because at this point I'm just, you know, pushing pieces around, hoping that, you know, hoping he'll get an important phone call and leave and, you know, lose on time. But of course that doesn't happen. So I'll go through this pretty quickly. I make a last-ditch effort to distract him, but he gets the checkmate on me. We used quite a bit of our clock. The game did go a couple hours, but yeah, really, at no point did I have an advantage. At best, you know, it was even for the first 15 to 20 moves, but once trying to see, I feel like once we got here, I would say this is kind of like the last part of the position where things could have been okay, because once he kicks the rook and trades the queens, and then he has these two passed pawns that are just going to march down the board. I mean, it's just, it was pretty much over here. Before it was fairly even, but at this point there's not much I can do. And then I make it worse by trying to kick the bishop. If I had just traded the rook and maybe come up, I could have also tried to defend a little more, um, but just for a little bit longer. But once I make this move, and to be honest with you, like I was not seeing the board clearly. Like I was not thinking straight because we had been playing chess for the whole day. I'd been sitting at the board, and I mean, even if you watch the round two video, towards the end of that game, I started missing. There were a couple mate and ones that I missed before I finally got the mate. And so for this game, like I was mentally and physically exhausted, and it was definitely not my best chess game. But props to Dwayne; he was a very strong player. He was the highest rated opponent I had faced up to that point. And spoiler alert, he does actually go on to win the section that we were playing in. So he finishes the tournament 4.5 out of 5. He does not lose a single game on either of the 2 days. So he has 4 wins and a draw. So I didn't beat myself too much. Didn't beat myself up too much over that loss because he's clearly a very strong player, and I definitely made some mistakes and kind of mishandled the middle game. And so, yeah, I didn't feel too bad about that one. So my buddy John, he actually also lost his game. So even though he had both moved up, we were playing on boards 1 and 2 for our section, and we were feeling good. We were both 2-0 going into round 3. We were both 2-1 after that evening, and then they actually had the pairings up Saturday night. So the game got done I was done at like 10 p.m. or something, or it was more like 9 or something like that. But they had the pairings posted Saturday night for the Sunday morning game for round 4. And so to add something to make this worse, I just took my first loss, and then I saw who I was paired against, and I was paired against my buddy John for the round 4 game, which we'll get to in the next video. But he was rated 1342 coming into the tournament. So I just lost to a 1270, and then I'm going to have to face a 1340 in the morning. So at this point, I was feeling really good after the first 2 rounds. I was now a little unsure about how I felt after taking the loss, and then what felt like another imminent loss coming in the morning. But we'll see what happens in round 4.